The first sign should have been the way she reorganized my kitchen without asking. The spice rack, alphabetized by her own logic, my favorite coffee mug relegated to the back of the cupboard. The second should have been how she referred to my house as our place after just 2 months. But when you're wearing rose-colored glasses, red flags just look like flags, don't they? My name is Elias Vance. I'm 34, and I run a moderately successful graphic design firm here in Austin. Until recently, I thought I had my life pretty well figured out. I own a comfortable 3-bedroom house in a quiet neighborhood, drive a decent car that's fully paid off, and have a good circle of friends I've known since college. My business brings in enough that I can save for retirement, take a nice vacation once a year, and still have some left over for my hobbies. By most measures, I was doing all right. Then I met Lorelei. We connected at a friend's barbecue last summer. She had this infectious laugh and a way of making everyone around her feel like they were the only person in the room. Dark, cascading hair that caught the sunset just right, green eyes that seemed to see right through you, and a confidence that was magnetic. She worked in marketing for a local startup, or at least that's what she told me at the time. "You have a beautiful home," she said the first time I invited her over for dinner. I'd spent hours cooking, cleaning, making everything perfect. It's got so much potential. I should have caught the hesitation, the way her eyes darted around, cataloging everything that wasn't to her taste. But I was too busy watching the way her lips curved around the rim of her wine glass. By our third date, she was staying over regularly. By the second month, her toothbrush had a permanent spot in my bathroom. By the third, she was suggesting new furniture arrangements and color schemes. "This place could use a woman's touch," she'd say, and I'd laugh, flattered that she was investing in our shared future. I saw it as nesting, a sign of commitment. When she mentioned her lease was ending, it seemed natural to suggest she move in. After all, we were practically living together already. "Are you sure?" she asked, twirling a lock of her dark hair between her fingers, her green eyes wide with a practiced vulnerability. "It's a big step." "I'm sure," I said, kissing her forehead. "It makes sense financially, too. Why pay 2 rents when you're here all the time anyway?" Financial sense. If I could go back in time, I'd slap myself for that comment. Because as it turned out, Lorelei's definition of making financial sense meant I would cover the mortgage, utilities, groceries, and most of our dates, while her income remained mysteriously unavailable for household expenses. "I'm saving for our future," she'd explain vaguely whenever the subject of money came up, her hand gently touching my arm as if to soften the evasion. "And besides, you make so much more than I do. It's only fair." Did she even have a job? The question began as a whisper in the back of my mind and grew louder with each passing week. She dressed expensively, was always getting packages delivered from high-end online stores, and seemed to have a never-ending supply of new clothes and makeup. But whenever I brought up work, her answers were evasive. "The startup world is complicated, Eli," she'd say with a dismissive wave of her hand. "We're in a transitional phase right now. You wouldn't understand." I let it slide. I was making enough to support us both, and I genuinely enjoyed having her around. She was fun, spontaneous, and affectionate, all the things I hadn't realized were missing from my carefully ordered life. The trouble, the first real trouble, started 6 months in when my best friend Finn invited me on a camping trip. "Just the guys," he said over the phone. 3 days at Big Bend. No cell service, no women, just beer, campfires, and bad jokes. I was excited. I hadn't had a guy's weekend in ages, and hiking had always been my escape. I mentioned it to Lorelei over dinner, already imagining the peaceful mornings and the star-filled nights. Her fork paused halfway to her mouth. "This weekend? But we have the Henderson party on Saturday." I frowned, searching my memory. "What Henderson party?" "Rachel Henderson from my yoga class. I told you about this weeks ago," she said, her tone laced with a hint of exasperation. "Her husband just got that big promotion at the law firm. Everyone's going to be there." She set her fork down with a definitive clink. "It's important for networking." I had zero recollection of any such conversation, but I'd learned it was easier not to argue about these things. "Can you go without me?" I already told Finn yes. She stared at me as if I'd suggested she walk to the party naked. "Without you? Eli, what would that look like?" "Everyone's bringing their partners." "It's just one party," I reasoned, trying to keep my voice calm. "And this trip is important to me. I haven't seen the guys in months." More important than supporting me?" Her voice had that dangerous edge to it, the one that preceded either tears or a slammed door. "This is exactly why Rachel says relationships are so much work. Men never prioritize their partner's social needs. And there it was, the classic Lorelei move, invoking the wisdom of some friend I'd never met to validate her position. I sighed, already feeling my resolve, weakening under the weight of her disappointment. I can reschedule with Finn, I conceded, the words tasting like defeat. Maybe next month. Her face brightened instantly. Perfect! I already bought you a new button-down that'll look amazing with my dress. Of course she had. The Henderson party was exactly what I expected. A room full of people I didn't know, discussing jobs I didn't understand, drinking overpriced wine, and pretending to care about kitchen renovations. Lorelei flitted from group to group, a social butterfly in her element, always making sure to introduce me as my Eli, the creative genius, before steering the conversation back to herself. I spent most of the night nursing a scotch in the corner, watching her perform. Because that's what it was, a performance. The laugh that was a pitch higher than her real one. The way she touched people's arms for emphasis. The stories about her marketing team that grew more elaborate with each telling. Driving home, I made the mistake of mentioning how I hadn't enjoyed myself. You could have made an effort, she snapped, her mask of charm gone, replaced by a cold frustration. Those are important connections. Connections for what? You still haven't told me what this startup of yours actually does. She crossed her arms, turning to stare out the window. If you'd been listening instead of hiding by the bar, you'd know. I was listening, I retorted, my own frustration boiling over. I heard you tell 3 different versions of how you got hired. Are you calling me a liar? Her voice rose dangerously. I'm saying I don't know what's true anymore, I admitted, gripping the steering wheel tighter. I don't even know if you have a job. Just because I don't punch a clock in some boring office doesn't mean I'm not working, she shot back. Some of us have more creative careers. Creative enough that you haven't contributed to a single bill in 6 months? The words hung in the air between us, heavy and ugly. She turned to face the window completely. I can't believe you're throwing money in my face right now. That's so unbelievably petty. By the time we got home, we'd reached an uneasy truce. I apologized for questioning her career. She apologized for downplaying my feelings about the party. And we both pretended the fundamental issues weren't still there, festering beneath the surface. The following weekend, Lorelei announced she was going away with her girlfriends. Just a little spa getaway, she said, already packing an alarmingly large suitcase for what she claimed was a 2-night trip. Rachel, Amanda, and Olivia rented a place near Dallas. The same Rachel from the party. I tried to remember what she looked like but drew a blank. That sounds nice. When will you be back? Sunday evening, probably. Unless we decide to extend. She tossed another handful of expensive lingerie into the suitcase. Since when did spa weekends require that much lingerie? Can't really extend, I pointed out gently. You have that big client pitch on Monday, right? The one you've been stressing about. She paused, her back to me. What meeting? The one you said could mean a promotion. Oh, that, she waved dismissively. It got pushed back. Restructuring. You know how it is in the startup world. No, I didn't know. My business involved actual clients with actual deadlines, but I bit my tongue. Well, have fun, I said, forcing a smile. You're the best, she chirped, kissing my cheek. So understanding, not like Rachel's husband. He throws a fit whenever she wants to do anything without him. That night, I met Finn for the drinks we'd rescheduled. Where's the girlfriend? He asked, sliding a beer across the table. Girls' weekend, I explained. Some spa retreat. Finn raised an eyebrow. Spa, huh? That's what my ex, Denise, used to call it too. What's that supposed to mean? He took a long pull of his beer. Nothing, man. Just... Denise had a lot of spa weekends before I found out she was seeing her personal trainer. Lorelei's not cheating on me, I said automatically, though a small, cold voice in the back of my mind whispered. But how would you know? The seed had been planted. When I got home that night, slightly buzzed and increasingly paranoid, I did something I'm not proud of. I went through Lorelei's desk. It felt wrong, invasive, a violation of the trust I thought we had. But I needed something, anything, to quiet the doubts Finn had stirred up. Surely I'd find work documents, emails, something to validate her stories. Instead, I found a cellar full of secrets. There were past due notices from credit card companies I'd never heard of. Statements with eye-watering balances, addressed to her but paid from an account I didn't recognize. Collection agency letters with threatening language. And a checkbook register that showed a clear pattern. Large deposits from my checking account, followed by a series of withdrawals to names I didn't recognize. I sat heavily on the edge of the bed, the papers scattered around me like shrapnel from a bomb. Who was this woman living in my house, sleeping in my bed, spending my money? As if on cue, my phone buzzed. A text from Lorelei. Miss you already. The girls say hi. Attached was a photo of her and three women I'd never seen before, raising champagne glasses. They appeared to be at a high-end restaurant, not a spa. And in the background, partially cropped out, was what looked suspiciously like a man's arm, a heavy gold watch on the wrist. I zoomed in, squinting at the pixelated image. Before I could decide what I was looking at, another text came through. Oops, wrong pic. Meant to send this one. The second photo was similar, but more carefully framed. No mysterious appendages in sight. My stomach churned with a nauseating mix of anger and clarity. The final piece of the puzzle, however, came not from her desk, but from my laptop. Driven by a desperate need for the whole truth, I searched for her online. There wasn't much under Lorelei Mitchell, which was supposedly her name. But a deeper search, combining her name with terms from the collection letters, led me to a 2-year-old article from the Dallas Morning News. Local woman charged in confidence scheme. The grainy mugshot showed a blonde, not a brunette, but the eyes, those unmistakable green eyes, were the same. According to the article, a woman named Cora Blackwood had been arrested for defrauding 3 men out of more than $50,000 by pretending to be an investment advisor. The charges were later dropped when the victims declined to testify, too embarrassed, I guessed, to admit how thoroughly they'd been conned. Cora, not Lorelei. Another lie in a mountain of them. My world didn't just crack, it shattered. I didn't sleep that weekend. The shock gave way to a white-hot rage, which then cooled into something colder, more calculated. Cora Blackwood, or whatever her real name was, had chosen the wrong mark this time. She thought I was a pushover, a human ATM too love-struck to notice her lies. She was about to learn otherwise. I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction of a dramatic confrontation. She thrived on drama. I was going to give her the cold, hard silence of consequences. I took Monday off work and set my plan in motion. First, I called my bank and credit card companies. I locked down my accounts, changed my passwords, and reported every unauthorized charge from the past 3 months. There were dozens, small enough that I hadn't noticed them individually, but adding up to thousands of dollars. Next, I visited a locksmith and had all the locks on the house changed, including the keypad code for the garage. Then, I gathered every single item of Cora's I could find. Clothes, shoes, makeup, the ridiculous decorative pillows she'd bought for our bed, and packed them neatly into boxes. I labeled each one clearly and stacked them in the garage. I took photos of the boxes and the items inside as evidence that I hadn't damaged or stolen anything. Then, using the iPad she'd foolishly left behind, I texted those photos to my own phone, creating a record that would be time-stamped and linked to her device. The iPad yielded other treasures: dating app profiles under various names, text conversations with men who were clearly not Rachel from yoga, and, most damning of all, a notes file detailing my routines, my income sources, and my account information. She'd been studying me like a hunter studies prey. My last 2 stops were with my lawyer and the Austin Police Department. I laid out everything, providing copies of the article, the financial statements, and the photos. Don't confront her alone, the officer warned me after taking my statement. These situations can escalate quickly. If she shows up, call us immediately. I had no intention of being there when Cora returned. I checked into a hotel under a name she wouldn't recognize and waited for the show to begin. She arrived home Tuesday morning, according to the security camera I'd had installed over the weekend. The footage on my phone was like watching a silent movie. I saw her trying her key in the new lock, confusion turning to frustration. She pounded on the door, shouting my name, her voice shrill and panicked. She moved to the windows, cupping her hands around her eyes to peer inside. I know you're in there, Eli. You can't just lock me out of my own home. My home, I thought, watching her meltdown from the safety of my hotel room. Not yours. Never yours. She tried calling me 12 times in a row, according to my blocked calls log. Then she started texting my friends, claiming I was having some kind of breakdown, and she was worried about my mental health. Luckily, I'd already reached out to my closest friends, including Finn, with the truth, warning them she might try something like this. Eventually, she retreated to her car, presumably to regroup. That's when the police cruiser pulled into the driveway. I had arranged for the officers to meet her there, to serve her with a temporary restraining order, and inform her that she was being investigated for fraud and identity theft. The camera didn't capture audio, but her body language told the story: initial indignation, then desperate charm, and finally, defeated compliance. They escorted her as she loaded some of the boxes into her luxury car, a car whose payments, I now realized, were likely funded by her last victim. It was justice without drama, consequences without chaos, and it was deeply, grimly satisfying. A few days later, I received a call from a Detective Evelyn Sterling, San Antonio PD, White Collar Division. "Mr. Vance," she said, her voice calm and professional, "I'm investigating a series of confidence schemes across Texas. Your report about a woman you know as Lorelei Mitchell, but who we know as Cora Blackwood, matches our suspect's MO." My heart raced. "You're after her too?" "We've been building a case for over a year," she explained. "Multiple victims, multiple jurisdictions. The problem has always been getting anyone to testify. Most men are too embarrassed. But you—" She paused, and I could almost hear her smiling. "You documented everything. You saved all the evidence, filed reports immediately. You're exactly the witness we need." She told me there were at least a dozen known victims, men like me, successful, single, and kind. She saw those qualities as weaknesses to exploit. As she spoke, she mentioned that one of her other victims had been helping them track Cora's patterns and had tipped them off after seeing my local police report. "He asked me to give you this," she said before ending the call, and she later emailed me a link. It was for a support group, Recovery After Financial Exploitation. I was interested, very interested, not just in recovering, but in connecting with others who'd been through the same hell, in making sure Cora couldn't do this to anyone else. The first meeting was eye-opening. 6 men, ranging from their late 20s to early 50s, sat in a circle in a sterile community center room. All successful professionals: a surgeon, a software developer, a restaurant owner, all victims of the same woman. Each story had its variations, but the core was identical. The whirlwind romance, the gradual takeover of their homes and finances, the mysterious job that never quite materialized, the girls' weekends that later proved to be meetups with other targets. "She had me convinced she was a pharmaceutical rep," said Robert, the surgeon who'd lost nearly $100,000. "Always on business trips, always had a reason why her commission check was delayed." "Investment advisor for me," added James, the software developer. "She even created fake account statements showing how my money was growing." "Life coach," said Tom, the restaurant owner, with a bitter laugh. Oh, the irony. We compared notes, shared the warning signs we'd all missed, and strategized for the upcoming legal proceedings. It was therapeutic in a way I hadn't expected, transforming private shame into collective purpose. We were an unlikely brotherhood, bonded by the shared trauma of being conned by the same woman. Over the following months, Detective Sterling built her case meticulously with our help. We provided statements, identified photos, verified timelines. The evidence was overwhelming. Cora had been sloppy, overconfident in her ability to charm her way out of any situation. That confidence had finally caught up with her. She was arrested at a casino in Louisiana, already working her next mark. A recently divorced real estate developer who'd been showering her with gifts, completely unaware of her true identity or intentions. The news of her arrest made the local papers. My phone blew up with messages from friends. Finn sent a simple text: "Justice served. Camping trip next weekend?" Testifying at the trial wasn't easy. Cora sat at the defense table, shooting me wounded looks that once would have had me tripping over myself to apologize. But now, I saw through the act. I saw the cold calculation behind the beautiful facade. I recounted our relationship factually, presenting evidence of her deception without emotion. Her attorney tried to paint it as a simple relationship gone wrong, a misunderstanding blown out of proportion by vindictive ex-boyfriends. "Mr. Vance," her attorney addressed me during cross-examination, "isn't it true that you invited Miss Blackwood to live with you because you wanted companionship?" "Yes," I replied evenly. "I invited my girlfriend to live with me. I didn't invite a professional con artist to bankrupt me." A murmur went through the courtroom. But the real bombshell came when the prosecution introduced evidence recovered from her phone, a group chat with several other women, where they discussed their various sugar daddies and shared tips on manipulation. In the chat, Cora had boasted about her conquests, including me. "Got a new one. Graphic designer, owns his house, no debt. Should be good for at least 50 Kelvin before I need to bounce." The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours before returning a guilty verdict on all counts. At sentencing, the judge was unsparing. Cora was sentenced to 8 years in federal prison with a restitution order of nearly $500,000 to be divided among her victims. Her composed facade finally cracked. She wept as she was led away, looking at us, her victims, with genuine fear in her eyes. For the first time, she was facing consequences she couldn't charm or lie her way out of. Life after the trial was a slow process of rebuilding. I implemented military-grade security on all my accounts and became almost paranoid about my personal information. The idea of dating again was terrifying. The other men from the support group reported similar after effects. It's like emotional identity theft, Tom explained during one meeting. She didn't just take our money, she took our ability to trust. But gradually, things improved. I stopped checking my bank accounts obsessively. I threw myself into work, reconnected with friends, and started hiking again. I even went on a few dates, though I insisted on splitting the check every time and volunteered exactly zero information about my income. Then I met Clara. She was an architect, brilliant and refreshingly straightforward. Our relationship developed slowly, built on conversations and shared interests rather than whirlwind intensity. On our 5th date, as the check arrived, she reached for it before I could. "Let me get this," she said with a simple smile. "You paid last time." Such a simple gesture, but after Cora, it meant the world. It meant partnership, not parasitism. It meant I wasn't being used. For the first time in a long time, I felt a flicker of hope that I could build something real again. 2 years to the day after Cora's sentencing, a car I didn't recognize pulled into my driveway. A tall, elegant woman in a conservative suit stepped out. For a moment, old panic flared. But this wasn't Cora. "Elias Vance?" she asked as she approached my porch. "My name is Marion Blackwood. Cora is my sister." I stiffened immediately, on guard. "If she sent you—" "She doesn't know I'm here," she interrupted, holding up a hand. "And I'm not here to make excuses for her. Quite the opposite." Intrigued, I offered her a seat. Up close, I could see the family resemblance, the same green eyes, though Marion's held a weariness Cora's never had. "I've been cleaning out my sister's storage unit," she explained. "Our mother passed away last month. I found something I thought you should have." She reached into her purse and pulled out a small notebook. "This is Cora's journal from when she was with you. I've read it. She was planning to drain at least $50,000 from you before disappearing. She was already setting up her next target on that spa trip." I took the notebook, feeling strangely calm. "Why give this to me?" She met my eyes directly, her own filled with a sad resolve. "Because you deserve to know that what happened wasn't your fault. Nothing you did or didn't do would have changed the outcome. My sister targets good men, kind men, generous men. She sees those qualities as weaknesses to exploit. You weren't weak, Mr. Vance. You were decent. And she weaponized your decency against you." It was exactly what I needed to hear, though I hadn't realized it until that moment. The lingering doubt that I'd somehow been uniquely naive, that I'd invited this deception, finally began to dissolve. That evening, I told Clara everything. I showed her the journal. It was terrifying, making myself that vulnerable, but necessary if we were going to build something real. She listened without interruption, her expression shifting from shock to anger to compassion. When I finished, she reached across the table and took my hand. "Thank you for trusting me with this," she said softly. "It does change how I see you. It makes me respect you more. You went through something terrible and came out stronger." A year later, I received the first restitution check from the prison system. It was for $35,000. Part of me wanted to rip it up, to tell Cora I didn't need her money. But another part knew that accepting it was making her face the consequences in a tangible way. Clara and I decided to cash the check, but not to spend a penny on ourselves. Instead, we established a fund for victims of financial fraud, particularly those exploited in romantic relationships. The support group evolved into a formal nonprofit, offering counseling, legal advice, and financial planning. We created awareness campaigns, helping others recognize the patterns of romantic fraud. The last time I saw Cora was through the thick glass of a prison visiting room. My impending fatherhood, Clara, was pregnant with our first child, made me want to close this chapter completely. She looked smaller, her hair, its natural sandy blonde. The bravado was gone, replaced by a quiet resignation. "I'm going to be a father," I said simply. I wanted to make sure I wasn't carrying any old baggage into that responsibility. Something flashed across her face. Regret, envy, Maybe both. Congratulations, she said, her voice raspy. This isn't the part where I tell you I forgive you, I said. This is the part where I tell you that what you did was wrong, but it didn't break me. That I built something good out of the damage. And I hope you're doing the same. As I stood to leave, she called after me. Elias. That night, changing the locks instead of confronting me. That was smart, really smart. Most men would have gone for the drama. I'm not most men, I said. No, she agreed, a faint, genuine smile touching her lips for the first time. You're not. That's why I picked you, and why I ultimately failed. As I walked out of the prison, I felt the last weight of that relationship finally lift from my shoulders. Clara was waiting in the car, her hand protectively cradling her belly. How do you feel? She asked as I slid into the driver's seat. Free, I said, and I started the engine. 3 months later, when our daughter was born, we named her Grace. Not just because she was beautiful, but because Grace had been the unexpected gift I'd received through all of this. The grace to recognize my mistakes without being defined by them. The grace to trust again after betrayal. And the grace to build a life based on mutual respect, not control. That lesson, as painful as it was to learn, had been worth every penny Cora took from me. Because in the end, I had gained something far more valuable than money. The wisdom to recognize real love when I finally found it.